Throughout your life, you will face very difficult situations. Perhaps you are facing them now. This is not something that only happens to you, it is a normal part of life that happens to all of us. Unfortunately, we tend to think that life should only be filled with happy and enjoyable moments, deceiving ourselves and creating a false reality. Despite not liking it and no matter how much we try to avoid it, at some point, we will encounter a situation that pushes us to our limits. Looking at the positive side, as human beings, we have the ability to control to some extent the emotions we feel and to face complicated situations more effectively and with less suffering. However, despite having this capability as human beings, it doesn't mean that it is an easy task. Throughout your life, no one teaches you how to properly manage your emotions, which is why I am making this video today. I will talk about temperance, one of the 4 historical virtues. To do this, I will tell you a story. Once, a king summoned the wise men of his court and said, "I have commissioned a precious ring with a diamond from one of the finest jewelers in the region. I want to have some words hidden inside the ring that can help me in difficult moments, a message I can turn to in times of despair. Additionally, I wish for this message to benefit my heirs and the children of my heirs in the future. It must be short enough to fit around the diamond of my ring." All those who heard the king's wishes were great wise scholars who could have written extensive treatises. But to have a message that consisted of just 2 or 3 words and fit around a diamond on a ring was incredibly difficult. Nonetheless, they pondered and searched through their philosophical books for many hours, but they could not find anything that suited the desires of the powerful king. The king had a beloved servant close to him, a man who had also been a servant to his father and had cared for him when his mother died. He was treated as family and held the respect of all. For these reasons, the king consulted him as well. The servant said, "I am neither a wise man nor a scholar nor an academic, but I know the message you seek." Curious, the king asked, "How do you know?" The servant replied, "During my long life in the palace, I encountered all kinds of people. On one occasion, I met a master who was a guest of your father's, and I was in his service. When he departed, I accompanied him to the door to bid farewell. As a gesture of gratitude, he gave me this message." At that moment, the elder wrote the mentioned message on a tiny piece of paper, folded it, and handed it to the king. "But do not read it," he said. "Keep it stored in the ring and open it only when you find yourself without a way out in a situation." This moment did not take long to arrive. The country was invaded, and his kingdom was threatened. He was fleeing on horseback to save his life, while his enemies pursued him. He was alone, and the pursuers were numerous. At one point, he reached a place where the path ended, and in front of him, there was a cliff and a deep valley. Falling would be fatal, and he couldn't turn back because the enemy blocked his path. He could hear the galloping of horses, their voices, and the closeness of the enemy. It was then that he remembered the ring, took out the paper, and opened it, finding a small message of tremendous value for that moment. It simply said, "This too shall pass." At that moment, he realized that a great silence hung over him. The enemies that had been pursuing him must have gotten lost in the forest or taken the wrong path. Nevertheless, the fact was that an immense silence surrounded him. He no longer heard the galloping of horses. The king felt deeply grateful to the servant and the unknown master. Those words had been miraculous. He folded the paper and placed it back into the ring, gathered his army, and reclaimed his reign. On the day of victory, there was a grand celebration in the city with music and dance, and the king felt very proud of himself in that moment. Once again, the elder by his side said, "Dear king, the time has come for you to read the message from the ring again." "What do you mean?" asked the king. "Now I am living in a situation of euphoria and joy. People are celebrating my return, and we have defeated the enemy." "Listen," said the elder. "This message is not only for desperate situations, it is also for pleasurable ones. It applies not only when you feel defeated but also when you feel victorious. It's not just for the last moments but also for the first. The king opened the ring and read the message, "This too shall pass." Once again, he felt the same peace and silence amidst the celebrating and dancing crowd. However, his pride and ego had disappeared. The king fully understood the message now: the bad was as transient as the good. The elder continued, "Remember that everything passes. No event or emotion is permanent. Just like day and night, there are moments of joy and moments of sadness. Accept them as part of the duality of nature, for they are the very nature of things." One of the keys to mastering our emotions is to understand and remember that what we are feeling at this moment won't last forever. Do you know anyone who has never experienced happiness or someone who has never lived through sadness? In both cases, those emotions don't last permanently throughout life. Good and bad things happen. When you go through a sad moment, accepting and understanding that sadness will pass can help. Acceptance doesn't mean resignation, passivity, or agreement with what is happening. It simply means accepting that many things that happen to us are beyond our control. Acceptance leads us to proactivity, making us aware that if we can do something or change our situation, all our energy and intention should be directed towards that goal. When we accept something, we are better able to move forward. Likewise, we shouldn't lose ourselves in moments of happiness. It's okay to enjoy them, but with moderation, without letting euphoria make us forget that these moments will also pass. People who forget this are never prepared to face the difficult situations in life. They live in a bubble that will eventually burst. A wise person enjoys the moment but doesn't forget the reality of life. They suffer in difficult situations but don't let themselves be consumed by uncontrolled sadness. This is temperance. In the story I previously mentioned, only two emotions were addressed, joy and sadness. But temperance applies to any emotion. No emotion becomes positive when taken to the extreme. However, almost any emotion, when managed with moderation, can bring something positive, even negative emotions. When controlled with temperance, they allow us to gain valuable insights for our lives. In the words of Seneca, temperance is a virtue that consists of mastering and moderating impulses and desires so that they do not lead us to excess or deficiency. In the words of Epictetus, temperance is a pleasant harmony of feelings that results from a life where desires are controlled and reason is the guide. And in the words of Marcus Aurelius, temperance is the virtue that helps us govern and direct our passions and desires, avoiding extremes and maintaining a balanced and moderate life.